running lesser known or less popular speed games can be a double-edged sword. On the one hand, no one in charge of a marathon has ever uttered the words, "720 is a must-see run." On the other, every once in a while they'll make it into a marathon, be it for novelty value, the speed tech involved, or in some cases, the sheer ridiculousness of what's happening on screen. Sometimes things don't go as planned for things that are the player's fault, but then there are instances where elements beyond the player's control affect the run, or even the marathon as a whole. If your only perspective on marathons is stuff like Games Done Quick or the European Speedrunner Assembly, it can be easy to underestimate the sheer number of speedrun marathons that happen every year, from major productions to the online equivalent of mom-and-pop operations. One of the more recently formed marathons I got to experience was called Columbus Glitch Bus, which was a one-day marathon that lasted roughly 10 hours and happened in a basement-level coffee shop. It was a small, intimate venue with a collection of local runners raising a few bucks for child's play. While the first year went pretty well, things took a turn for the worse on the second go-around. There were some weird decisions made, like not streaming to the marathon's dedicated channel and instead broadcasting and uploading to a different channel, one usually reserved for broadcasting competitive Smash Bros. Matches. This, however, is about something that was beyond everyone's control. A few runs into the marathon, the internet connection slowed to a crawl, then all but died. There was a scramble to try and bring the marathon back online, but when nothing was working, a compromise was made. The runs would all be recorded, then rebroadcast at a later date. It seemed like the best option at the time, but once the recordings started getting uploaded to YouTube, again, to the Smash Bros. Broadcast channel and not the dedicated marathon channel, something wasn't quite right. Some of the runs were all lumped together into one video, and others were missing parts of their runs. For example, my Metal Combat run and Nook's Resident Evil 2 run were in the same video. This didn't affect my runs per se, but it did nearly have a big impact on another runner, Mr. T.O. Joe, who did a 100% run of The Tourist. Due to a recording error, his run's video didn't start until over 6 minutes had passed. We found out later that the first minute and 10 seconds or so was also in the same video as my Metal Combat run, leaving about 5 minutes unaccounted for. That's not the worst thing in the world since the run is usually over 70 minutes long, unless he happens to get a new personal best or world record in this run. And guess what? He got a new world record in that run. Fortunately for him, the run still ended up getting verified on the leaderboard, and he went on to lower the best time even further. But man, I don't know how I'd react if I got a new best time, then found out afterward that part of the run was straight up missing. That was something out of my and everybody else's hands, but the rest of these stories concern things that went wrong on my end. This one goes so far back that the channel which the marathon was broadcast on no longer exists, and most of the videos for it are gone. The 2014 Bad Games Marathon included such absolute winners as Plumbers Don't Wear Ties, Wolf Quest, Draken, and 2 submissions from me, Ninja Breadman and Escape from Bug Island. This was back when I was still trying to get a grip on how to stream properly, with my desktop microphone sitting on a chair and a stack of books, and an Elgato game capture that I barely knew how to use. Even though my Ninja Breadman run went alright, that was a less than 5-minute run, while Bug Island takes over an hour. The run started okay, but after a couple areas, the marathon host chimed in to tell me that my game footage froze on stream. I turned back to my computer and saw my monitor had gone black. My screensaver kicked on, and that caused the game's stream to freeze wherever I was at the time. To keep this from happening again, anytime a loading screen popped up, I would lean over and nudge my mouse. I used to have my screensaver set to turn on after about 10 minutes of inactivity, but after that run, I haven't had it below 20 ever since. Sadly, that's not the only mid-marathon tech problem that was my fault, as many years later, at ESA Corona Relief 2020, I managed to have another tech snafu. I was running Metal Combat Falcon's Revenge while in the ESA Discord. And this happened.
Yeah, it's because right away you can just like drop a bomb and just start blowing Gigabest away, but it's a more interesting, definitely more tactical run. You got to be careful with the shots you fire. Nice. Well, that's a good Thanatos.
Shoutouts to the friend of mine who tried calling me on Discord in the middle of a marathon run.
I thought for sure I had the sound for that disabled and that I was in streamer mode, but apparently not. Again, thankfully it didn't affect the run, and I was able to laugh it off later with the person who tried calling me. Then there were the times a tech problem completely out of my hands nearly ruined everything. Sometimes runs get mercy killed. This can happen for a few reasons, like the game freezing or soft locking and not being able to continue, or a run going way over its estimate. While I haven't had this happen yet, knock on wood, I did come very close to it during a charity marathon, specifically Mid-Spring Speed Fling 2019. I wasn't scheduled to run initially, but when another runner dropped, I got scheduled as a backup to run the NES version of 720. Things were going fine until about the 5-minute mark, which was approaching the halfway point of the run.
So that animation the kid did where he like jumped up and went yay on his skateboard, I have no control over that. And I don't know what's happening.
My cartridge stopped working. The only thing I could do in this scenario was ask the marathon organizer if I could start over, since 720 doesn't have any sort of save or password system to continue from a later stage. He ruled that since we were ahead of schedule and the run was short enough, I could do that, but I had to get the game working again. After a couple attempts to clean the contacts and place the cartridge just right into the NES pin connector, it started working again. Crisis averted, right? Well, mere seconds into the run, I had a different tech issue.
Welcome to 720. That last run did not happen. Just ignore that.
I thought my stream alerts were turned off. Apparently not. When it rains, it pours. Or in the case of the RF switch my NES was hooked up with, when it snows, it snows. And finally, as you might expect, I've had problems in the past running Super Scope games outside of my home. Super Scope speedruns are not a common thing, particularly not when done live. Most people who run these games do so with an emulator, and the crosshair or dot on screen makes it apparent when the game's being played that way. A big reason they tend to be played like this is that the hardware necessary to play them isn't that widely available. Super Scopes are getting harder to find, and CRT TVs are more commonly found in landfills than living rooms. Even then, the Super Scope can be a bit finicky if not used under ideal conditions. Cut to the first ever Midwest Speed Fest. It's grown considerably over the years, but the first edition of the marathon was little more than a couple computers against the far wall of a game room, no more than 20 feet from where live music was played, with occasional flashing lights. Not ideal for focusing on and commentating speedruns, but the environment also didn't help the Super Scope. Usually if the lighting is at least a consistent level in the room, it'll work just fine. But in the middle of this run, my shots started going way off to one side, or not registering at all, and it caused me to take a death on an otherwise easy fight. It happened one or two other times as well, resulting in another death and ultimately a time closer to my estimate than I'd hoped. This was still arguably not as bad as another run I did of the same game at another marathon. Buckeye Speed Bash is a small speedrun marathon based out of Columbus, Ohio, and in 2017 I ran 2 games, one of them being Battle Clash. I offered to bring my own TV for the run, something I eventually started doing anytime I knew I was running a Super Scope game, but presumably because of the tech nightmare that would be having to hook up a new TV mid-marathon, I just used the one they had. Things seemed to be working okay, even though it was a little smaller than the one I usually use. Until I tried shooting to the left side of the screen, and nothing happened. For whatever reason, the left third of the screen would not register any shots. For some fights, this had no effect on my ability to finish them, but for enemies that moved around a lot, it became much more of an issue, having to wait until they moved away from the left side before trying to shoot. Still, the run managed to finish under estimate, which in a marathon is all I really care about. It's great to have backups whenever possible, be it a safer strategy or an extra save file prepped in advance, or even a cheat code to move across levels if necessary. Sometimes though, that just isn't an option. More obscure or lesser run games often don't have these kinds of safety nets, and agreeing to run them live means accepting the risk of the run dying a death in front of a live audience. However, when tech problems happen in your run that are totally out of your hands, all you can do is just laugh. As someone who is barely competent enough to stream and edit video, and who has had a personal marathon nearly derailed by a power outage, sometimes all you can really do is just acknowledge the ridiculousness of it all and keep on running.